Bartosz, Tom Hitchcock, how are you?
Good, thank you, Tom. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. Now, I'm going to have a crack at the surname. Now, I've been guilty recently when and it's not a surname I'm familiar with. I've been asking how to pronounce it, and it's always been the obvious. So I'm going to try it the other way around this time and just say it. I'm going to go with Cybulski.
Way off. That'd be Cybulski.
Oh, yeah. Blimey. It doesn't matter. I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't, whichever way I go.
That's right.
So, that'd be Polish? Polish?
It is. Yeah. It is Polish. That's right. Yeah. Look, I'm a migrant, obviously. We came here in 89. Okay. My parents managed to get out, and we came through actually a refugee camp in Frankfurt. So we spent a little bit of time there, and we applied for visas to Canada and Australia. We ended up coming through to Australia, which thank goodness, the weather's just fantastic, and we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. But the journey was certainly very emotional and uprooting from family and friends and everything that we knew. We came here, as I mentioned, in 89. We didn't speak any language, and thankfully the government looked after us, and we got to work as soon as we hit the shores. But for myself personally, I think coming out of Poland especially, Australia was a beautiful state with great weather and just amazing people, and the beaches, can't get enough. But growing up in a big city certainly left a mark. So I remember developing asthma early on, and so that started to become an issue when I was still in primary school. I then went on to develop what's called leg length discrepancy, so LLD, and that meant that by the time I came into Australia, one of my legs was already growing further than the other, and thankfully we were able to get surgery, which then stopped my right leg from growing, allowed the other one to catch up, and then got me straight into swimming. And so swimming, I think, was a real defining factor in my life, because not only did it help to sort of heal the body overall, but also help you to get through asthma. It was me and a bunch of asthmatic kids who all jumped on board at the same time, and we all went on to be cured, I guess, in a way. But it certainly helped in a massive way. But what it really did for me, Tom, and I think that's really the key message here today, is the power of habits. To be swimming in high school, I had to be up at 4:30 a.m. to get my way out there, to do the training for 2 hours in the morning, and then walk myself to school. And I think what that did is it introduced me to really your passion, doing what you love, and really the importance of health and well-being, especially as we get older. So once I guess I got through high school, I stopped the swimming because it was a lot. So I didn't really have any other passion for sports, and I met my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and I just got very comfortable. So I very quickly put on quite a lot of weight, and I think between the fact that my back had been impacted by the LLD and the fact that I had already started to carry more weight than I was used to, I started to really struggle health-wise with regards to things like quite severe back pains, things that probably people wouldn't really feel until they were much later on in life. And so I took a look at myself in the mirror, and I thought, this isn't what I want. And so I got back out there, and I went for a jog, and that was the most grueling jog of my life. I got through it barely. But what it did is it started to get me back into the health and fitness space. And one thing just led on to the other. And really what that did for me is it started to make me look at what I also eat, how I also feel after exercise, without exercise, in the morning. It started to force me to look at my habits, the way I thought, the way I approached my life, the way I interacted with other people. And it kind of became a domino effect where this one difference to re-enter into the health space in a physical space then started to get me going into every single other area of my life, which then led it to personal development. Great books like Everything That Remains by Joshua and Ryan, Atomic Habits by James. The Power of Now really made a huge impact, because procrastination was also something that I had struggled with quite a bit. But these sort of books really help you to start to look at what's important in your life and what needs to stay. And I'm a big believer in, you make space for something when you get rid of the things you don't need. And so that started to get me onto a really, I guess, a more mindful path. I think you can hear that I'm a big fan of health, physical, mental, and spiritual. And ultimately what it led to is a lot more work with mindfulness, a lot more work with things like yoga as well. I think, as we age, our bodies change and our fitness goals change. And that certainly is the case, not just for your body, but for your mind. And I'm a big believer in bringing the energy that you want into the room. So for me, the journey ended up going down more of that mindfulness path. And so every day, as an added to waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going back to swimming, because after spending a bit of time doing cross-country running as well, I felt the impact. I felt the impact on my hips, on my knees, on my joints, and that really wasn't what I wanted going long term. So coming back into swimming and getting up at 5 a.m. to be able to move your body and then start to get into the right frame of mind, and getting into that right frame of mind then pays, I believe, dividends as you then move through the day and you have a better attitude. So I make sure that every single day, a part of that routine is also things like yoga and mindfulness. So that really helps me, especially after a busy day and having 2 young kids. It helps me just to stabilize and just to come back to a more natural core. And it's a good vice to have, because I think it doesn't mean I'm depending on anything else. It just means that I can naturally kind of work my way through the real issues and anything else that's going on internally. Sometimes we get too busy and we don't really hear the internal monologue, and taking a little bit of time to just pause once or twice a day certainly helps to clear that a little bit too.
Love it. Okay, well, listen, what I'd like to do, if it's okay, if you wouldn't mind unpacking it little by little, and I want to start off at the beginning, okay? And I don't always go through a timeline in this case, but it is something that's a bit separate, and you bring something to the table, an experience which I don't commonly come across when chatting to people on here, and that's someone that's experienced the refugee camp firsthand, okay? Now, refugees is a bit of a hot potato at the moment in politics. It's a hot potato because it's quite divisive. So people have very clear opinions one way or the other. And it isn't about who's right or wrong here, but I wouldn't mind hearing firsthand the experience of what it's like in one of those camps, because I can't help but feel but that experience and the gratitude you had for a change of circumstances has been pretty much a catalyst for where you've gone thereafter.
Absolutely, Tom. Yeah, look, there are refugee camps and there are refugee camps. In Frankfurt, it was a very, very well-run refugee camp. We've had other family friends who had different experiences, but ours was quite positive in the sense that, look, whenever you move into a state-run kind of environment, you can face challenges, but ours was quite straightforward in that sense. But I think what really, as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid, really the impact you feel is the absence of family and friends. So I remember when we had to escape at the time, we had to be quite secretive about the departure. And so I remember coming out and saying goodbye to all my playground friends, having to say goodbye to my family. Family members obviously not taking it well once they figure out that they might never see you again. And some of them we never did. My grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side both passed away before I had an opportunity to come and visit in 2005. But that I guess created quite a lot of stress and quite a lot of anxiety for 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid. Obviously speaking Polish and moving to Germany, not speaking German, then moving from Germany to then Australia, not knowing how to speak English, and then having to learn all those steps along the way, makes you quite good at adapting really quickly from one moment to the next. But there was a lot of time there spent with just my parents. There was a lot of me time, I guess you could say. So those experiences change you obviously on a fundamental level. So for myself, it certainly made me into a more introverted person, because you had to become more self-dependent within yourself. And absolutely correct. You know, it is a divisive issue right now in our community, and you know, it certainly skewers the way that I see my time here in Australia and how I feel about migration. As I've mentioned, when we arrived, we were really grateful for the assistance that we received, because without it, we wouldn't have anywhere really to go. So once we came here and got ourselves established, and we found a home and registered, did all the necessities. My dad got out to work as soon as he absolutely could to provide for his family, to support the whole entire, I guess, endeavor. And he had to take a lot of, I guess, you know, hits in the sense that he was doing very different work to what he was doing in Poland, where he was a ballet dancer. And so that was a real change in lifestyle, in career, in the kind of life that he was used to living, because he felt so strongly about coming to a place like Australia.
Okay, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And then you had a health scenario, and one that's a little bit different to what is a lot of people can relate to. Okay, but I think by then you've already picked up that adaptability piece. Okay, how old was you when you were diagnosed with was it LL?
So LLD, so leg length discrepancy. Yeah, look, Tom, you could tell by the time I was 7, because in Poland, I remember there being pictures, you know, group pictures, family pictures, friends pictures. And in the picture, Bart was always off to an angle like that. And it was like, what's happening there with Bart? Not quite sure. But it wasn't until we came here and saw a professional that he mentioned, this is what's happened. And fortunately, I was young enough to do something about it naturally, in the intervention, but allowing the body then to catch up, so that you don't need to wear a heel for the rest of your life, because that's the outcome. When one leg is shorter than the other, you have to wear kind of like a support on one side. So thankfully, we did the procedure by 9, shaved off a little bit of bone in my right knee on both outer and inner. And then with the swimming, because swimming being a non-impact sport, exercising all parts of the body equally, I was then able to continue the development in a more holistic way. Fortunately, by the time being 18, 19, 20, everything being finally caught up.
Good. Well, we've both got the swimming haircut, so
I don't have a choice, Tom.
Yeah, I think I'm still just about, but it'd be more of a comb over. Okay, all right, so that's good. So we see how things are progressing now, and now it's starting to make a bit more sense as to why habits play quite a big part of your life. Now, you're talking to a topic that I'm very familiar with, and I work with people in the neuroplasticity side of things, which is very, very, very similar to habits. Okay, there's a lot of people that read James Clear's book, where it makes perfect sense. It's very relatable for everybody, and people make incremental changes, and incremental changes is sometimes all that you need. Okay, but that's still very surface level, in my opinion. What I like about how you explained it, it's the habits in every component of your life. So your relationship to yourself, that time, what can I swap over time with, how we think of others, the opportunities I give yourself to be mindful, which basically thinking inwards and taking that time to reflect, and to really understand that it isn't just about maybe shifting some timber or some kilos or whatever. It is an opportunity to change habits in every respect of your life, and see the domino effect in action. Is that that's what I picked up from listening to how you started talking about it. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, Tom. Yeah, as a kid, I swam because I kind of had to. And being a kid, you don't really understand how one piece might connect to the other. It wasn't until I had a little bit of time off from the swimming, and I felt the effects of the pain in the back and the hips and everything else, that I realized why I had to keep going down that track. So it was never for glamour and for show. It was for necessity. And so that then started to get me to, as I mentioned, thinking about things more broadly. So in your 20s, when you start to exercise and you have some rapid gains, you feel great about yourself, and then you hit a wall, and then you think to yourself, well, how do I get past that wall? When you start to look at what you're eating, and then you make a little bit of shifts there, a bit of improvements, and then you go along, and then you hit another wall, and you go, well, what's happening in that space? And then you feel the way that food starts to affect you. You start to feel the way that moving your body starts to affect you. And then you start to bring that positive energy into your workspace, into your family space, and you start to feel the benefits of that, of those habits. But then on the other hand, like day and night, when you're not following those habits so much, and you do fall into some of your old traps, which we all do from time to time, it's not about falling down, it's about how you get back up. They give you the perspective on again, why it's important to keep moving your body, why it's important to keep, for example, I fast now 20, 22, 23 hours, and then I have the meal at the end of the day. But you feel the clarity, you feel the benefit of the clean meals, you feel the great energy that you bring into every single space that you are in. And then you start to see the dividends pay from those.
I think that's a fair point, because there's a lot of things that we can do, and if we don't see immediate or quick outcomes, then we get despondent and give up quickly. That's a societal thing more than anything. So it's really important to try to cultivate decent outcomes quickly, and then use that as the encouragement to go longer term and make things a lot more permanent. On the mindfulness, and I spoke about this with a couple of people recently on episodes. I'm not too sure if they've been published yet or not, but we talked about how mindfulness, just due to how society is, our access to smartphones, and how with every bit of downtime is actually stimulus time. So we've got, for the example I'm going to repeat what was said on the other podcast. I'm trying not to, but I can't think of another way to do it. So back in the day, if we was going to meet someone in the pub and we didn't have a mobile phone, we're meeting them at 5 p.m. Okay, they're running late. Okay, there's nothing else we could do apart from sit alone, and we're actually being mindful. We're in Planet Tom, with our own thoughts and that, and then they come in, oh, hello, mate, how you doing? And you do what you do. Nowadays, you're there, right, let me scroll, let me let me watch this, and then you fill that void with stimulus. So what this meant to us is before all this stuff was here, we're actually being mindful without realizing it, okay? Whether it be on the bus, whether it be on the train, we had all these wonderful mindful moments, and now it's fashionable. It needs to come back through. It's something we need to create because we've missed out on all of those. So it's kind of this rebound effect.
Absolutely. I think balance is not something people do well. And we can swing from one extreme into the other. And you're quite right, Tom. I think mindfulness is due for a comeback, and it's a practice like anything else. You need to be able to exercise that mental muscle and to be able to quieten those thoughts, which is a bigger challenge sometimes than we anticipated it to be. But it's okay. And there's plenty of guidance online. And what I always like to do is I like to start small. I like to start basic. I like to start with something that I can get my hands around. And so 5 minutes of meditation, really, guided or unguided, just in a quiet space, was really where it started, because that's all I had time for between, family commitments and work and everything else. That's all I had time for. But as I felt those benefits come in, it started to expand out. I mean, if I had the time, I would love to sit down and do like a 30-minute or hour-long meditation. It's also why I listen to Audible and don't have a chance to sit down and read a book. It's just that crazy. But it's absolutely right. It is due for a comeback. But I also want to touch on something you just mentioned there, which is quite interesting, and that is what happens in this world where the stimulation is only, really increasing and quite likely due to continue to increase. If you think about the way that we're interacting with one another and how now we have all the information in the power of our hands with a mobile phone. That's something you didn't used to have. And I can't help to think that today's generation with a mobile phone in their hand kind of feels like yesterday's generation with a television set in their room, which felt like the generation before with a radio. And there was always something going on in the background. And just the way that we've adapted over the years. But I do wonder if there is a saturation point, or if it will ever get to a certain point where, through things like Neuralink potentially, where we are always connected to one another, and what that world will look like tomorrow, and just how the brain might be able to adapt to that, and how our lifestyles might be able to adapt to that. But there's plenty of evidence out there how mindfulness helps to restructure that brain, how it helps you to dig into a deeper sense and a deeper calm, which otherwise can be quite difficult to get.
I think it's essential. It's medicinal. It's what brings us back to being human. And the problem is with all these practices, and if we look at it in a futurist sense, like we're watching Black Mirror or something, it's escapism on steroids and some. Okay, I watch these things. I do. I like my movies, like my series and stuff. But I like things that are thought provoking, so we can question this. But the movie Ready Player One. And it's all futurist. I like to see where they predict where we're going. But if we look at how that is there, so you've got the proletariat, they're all stacked on top of each other. All of them are just plugged in, living in a different universe, the brain elsewhere, just to get away from the crap they're in.
Yeah.
I don't think that's far-fetched. The technology is here, the situation's here. It's just needs to become more of a societal norm, moving on from the radio, as you said, to the TV, to the mobile, to, is everybody plugged into a version of VR where, that's where we're taking our brain because we don't like being on our own anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very interesting space. Just talking about uploading your brain. When I'm thinking about, for example, my photo album, I don't know if you use cloud computing. It feels like everybody is right along there with AI. But my whole entire story in video and digital format is online, and that comes at a monthly cost. What happens when you start paying that cost or stop paying that cost? And then that then escalated on steroids to your whole entire life, to your whole entire world being plugged in digitally, and how that looks like. But absolutely right. It seems like we are all heading down that path of really just an increased level of digital presence, and I guess some of the challenges that we'll have to navigate once we get there, to how to keep safe, how to keep sane, and everything else in between.
That's it. All right, mate. Listen, unfortunately, it does bring us to a wrap. I feel the conversation could keep going and going, which would only be good for our listeners. So I'd imagine let's look, if you're comfortable with it, booking up a Bartosz 2.0. And I'm not going to try and pronounce the surname again. I've failed once, I'm not failing twice, but that's how I'm learning.
Thank you, John.
But anybody listening to you today, listening to your episode, your story, there's things they'd like to have some engagement with you about, what would be the best route for them to make contacts with you?
Oh, look, LinkedIn's a great place to do it. And I'm always available on there. So a direct message will do well.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you for letting me be on your channel.
More than welcome.
Thank you.